Well, I try not to worry about it. I figure the Lord will take care of everything. I have faith in the Lord, and I have faith in NASA. I know that they won't send them up unless they know that everything is right.
Mrs. Bean, Allen and his family and you and Mr. Bean have many friends in Fort Worth, of course, living here as long as you have, and some relatives too. What do they think about Allen Bean going to the moon?
Well, they're all excited about it, and we get calls all the time, and friends come by, and a lot of them, of course, they say when he was little, they always knew he wanted to fly, but they never realized, well, the same as us, that anything would come up like this in our day.
Mr. Bean, I imagine you're quite proud of your son, Allen, as well you might be, and fathers and sons have habit of talking to each other about things. When's the last time you had a chance to talk to Allen, and what were his feelings about this upcoming flight and the program in general?
I talked to him on the phone about last week, and he's ready. He's more than ready, of course, and he's, of course, impatient to get started. And he is very happy that the whole thing is going on, and he's elated that things are going so well.
Has the broadcast industry, particularly television, been guilty of not telling its own story and, as a consequence, let a whole cry or outcry against it build up?
I think that has happened. Broadcasters have been very reluctant over the years to use the air to defend themselves or to tell a positive story about their achievements. And I think in the matter of free journalism, they have been particularly reluctant. I don't know why. In fact, people do find broadcast news, television news, particularly more credible than newspaper news, for example. There's every reason why we should turn to the people we serve, remind them of how important it is that their press be free to move where it has to move, to cover what it needs to cover. I'm afraid that in some recent court decisions, there have been invasions of the press's freedom, the press in broadcasting, that this can have very, very damaging effects on all of us.
Can television do this, or how can television do this without abusing the very power that it has?
I think the kind of thing that happens on WFAA TV when your manager, Mr. Shapiro, has his program, Let Me Speak to the Manager, is a perfectly good idea. There is room for an exchange between viewers and management. There's an opportunity for questions to be answered. And if, in fact, someone feels that Mr. Shapiro has been unfair, really unfair about an important issue, he has a right to ask for time to respond, which is very proper in itself.
What other kinds of things can television do, or that television is doing that probably most of the public doesn't realize?
I think, I don't think anybody really knows what's involved in a television news operation. I think that an interesting program could be done by almost any station, a brief program, to show how that station goes out and gathers news in its own community. Show there's nothing mysterious about it, that these are just workaday people trying to do a fair job for everybody concerned. I find the business exciting. I think everyone else would too.
What should television be doing in regards to the question of violence on television?
Well, what television has done in this year is to reduce the level of violence in almost all entertainment shows. If you look at the new nighttime schedules, you'll find very little. But let's not deceive ourselves. The causes of violence don't lie in television. The causes of violence lie in the problems that we face in our society. Long before there was television, there were lynchings and murders, and the streets of our cities were far less safe to walk in than they are today. Television should not be used as a scapegoat. We have to come to grips with the basic problems that all of us face if we want to eliminate violence in our lives.
Let me say this about a race with Governor Smith if I were a candidate for governor. I would consider myself to be an underdog in this race. I take this into consideration in a race against Governor Smith. I think he's correct that he is in a much stronger position than I am, despite what the polls say. Governor Smith will have the support of a great deal of the moneyed interest. The lobby would be very strong in Austin for Governor Smith being reelected. I would be operating at a disadvantage as far as trying to run against a strong political machine. And these are things that I have to take into consideration in trying to determine whether I'll be a candidate for governor.
Dr. Tausig, could you compare the lifespan between the so-called blue baby and the normal birth?
I don't believe that a blue baby has as good a lifespan as a child. A blue baby means, as we use the term today, that there's something fundamentally wrong with the heart, so that the circulation of the blood is wrong, and some of the blood meant to go to the lungs is going to the body. Now, I don't believe that anyone who has an abnormal circulation has as good a chance for life as with a normal circulation. And I really don't believe that if you cut open the heart and correct it all, a heart that's been operated on is quite as good as a heart that hasn't required an operation. But life can be good for them.
They may look like any other airport plans, but the plans that were approved today by the Dallas-Fort Worth Regional Airport Board, called Intermediate Terminal Plans, represent a very important step in the development of the regional airport. Planner Jack Downey explains why.
They literally constitute a summation of all of the work done to this time, that is, all of the preliminary phase, the schematic phase, and they act as a dividing point, in effect, between making a dream come true on paper and then making that paper come true into concrete and steel. In other words, they divide the planning from the design and construction phase of the contract.
Approval of the basic terminal concept removes virtually the last of the major stumbling blocks in the way of the airport. Now the board is at the mercy only of labor unions and the weather. Completion is still planned for the spring of 1973. This is Phil Reynolds, Channel 8 News at the Dallas-Fort Worth Regional Airport Board.
Nancy, me?
What was your reaction here this morning?
Well, I was writing names of all the finalists, and I got to 5, and I put a K down and then threw my pencil up in the air. And that's my reaction. I started crying and walked up to the stage and hugged everybody.
How did you get interested or involved in the Miss Teenage America Pageant?
Well, 3 years ago, a girl from Dunn won Miss Teenage Dallas, and when she won, I started thinking about it, so it's been a pretty long-range plan.
I heard some conversation a while ago, which may have been private. If it was, I'm sorry to have been an eavesdropper. But what about this breaking of diet rules that I hear about you?
Well, every time we eat, they give us some crackers and 1 pat of butter, and I keep asking for more butter, and finally they've gotten a hint, and every night they bring me about 10 pats of butter on my plate.
Some 350 broadcast executives are in Dallas confronting each other and the several major issues that are confronting them. The occasion is the fall conference of the National Association of Broadcasters of the South and Southwest. At luncheon today, the major speaker to the group was a representative of that body which is at times confronting the industry, the Congress of the United States. The speaker was the chairman of the Subcommittee on Communications and Power, Torbert McDonald. One of the items he mentioned is pay TV, which most broadcasters oppose.
In the witness list that we have coming up, the people who officially represent the elderly, the Washington headquarters of the elderly are here in Washington or are about to go to Washington to speak for pay TV, because it's pay TV guarantees them entertainment, and they say that to see a movie it costs them so much. They take a bus or take a cab or drive their car downtown to park it, and to pay the cost of the movie is much more expensive than to watch it in their home.
In panels and sessions today and tomorrow, the broadcasters are also discussing such major items as advertising, cigarette advertising, and licensing renewal. This is Teel Salaun at the National Association of Broadcasters Fall Conference.